Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. This is the second video on our store management system or admin panel using Flutter web, which is basically the same thing. On our previous video we only did this basic setup of the web page using Flutter, but by the end of this video you'll be able to get the revenue from the database, the products, and the orders. Another thing you'll be able to do by the end of this video is getting all of this data actually from the database. Here we have the users, right? And I defined the fields that we want to have on our store management system. You can check the orders here. You have the user who did that order, description of the order, creation date, and the total amount. You can view the products. At the moment we only have 6 products on our store, as you saw previously, and this is the data that we are displaying. And again, you can display whatever you want here. I just picked these values here. You can see the categories of our products here, and finally you can see the brands that we have on our store. This is what you'll be able to do by the end of this video, and on the next video we are going to start adding products, interacting with the database, basically adding brands, categories, products, everything here, and be able to do some operations on our data like search operation, deletion, and updation. But that's for the next video. If you guys are interested, stay tuned. But before we get straight to it, a small word from our sponsor, Skillshare. This video was made possible by Skillshare. Skillshare is this online learning community where you can have classes on a multitude of topics, ranging from animation, design, illustration, business, lifestyle, and even programming. But what's even better is that you can take all of these Flutter classes on Skillshare, including the very first one I took on Flutter, which is this one by Paulo Deshan. And the good news doesn't have to stop there, because the first 1,000 people to sign up using the link in the description will gain free access to Skillshare Premium, and after that you'll be paying less than $10 per month on the annual subscription, so it's still very affordable. If you do sign up, you'll be supporting the channel and supporting me, so thank you very much. Hey guys, so we can start this by opening up one of these files, let's say the user page, and if you see here we have a lot of code, and all of this code comes from the dependencies that we are using, responsive table package. And if you open that on our Flutter's dev for dependency, you'll see all of this code. I just reused that code so that we don't have to write everything from scratch, since we already have that. And this is the dependency that we are using, responsive table. Now what we want to do is actually optimize our code, making sure that the back end logic or the business logic of how the table works is not here inside of our widget, but we have a different file which is a provider on our case that's going to handle all of that. Now let's create a provider, call it users, and here we are going to import Flutter material.dart and define our provider as users provider with change notifier, and this is how we define a provider. Good. Now let's go to our main file, and we need to set our provider here so that we can use it on our app. So we just need to call user providers, and that's fine. Now let's go to the users page where we have the table and remove the headers and paste that into our provider. Let's make sure our headers is a public variable and import responsive table. Now we are going to import here our user provider. Here just import providers, and here we have user provider. Now here to access the headers, we'll have user providers. Let's make sure this is correctly typed. So I'll just copy and paste. Good. What we are going to do here is copy all of these variables here on this widget and paste them inside of provider and get rid of the init state. We don't need that no more, and paste everything here. Let's come here where we have is loading and set that to public by removing the underscore. Now here we can delete the set state and just do is loading is equal to true when init data starts, and is loading is equal to false when the data has been initialized. Good. And here we just have to import, call our named constructor, where we are going to call init data, and change here. Good. Now just import math here so that we can have random method. Good. Now what we want to change here is set all of these variables to public variables by removing the underscore here preceding the name of the variable. I think it's good enough. And do the same thing everywhere where we call the variable. Just remove the preceding underscore, which is good. Now here inside of our users data, we just have to change the variable names following this pattern, having user provider dot the variable name, because the variable is no longer present inside of the widget, but now it's defined inside of the provider. Do it like that. Well, here on sort, since this is a method, we'll come to fix this afterwards. Now let's just rename the variables, and then we'll deal with the methods. Very straightforward, just changing the name of the variables, calling them from the providers, and make sure we are going to do that with all of the variables here. Okay, here we have set state. It's a method. We are going to deal with this one afterwards. And inside of this container, just do the same thing. Remove the underscore preceding the variable name, and I'll just copy here and paste here, and do the same thing here. So basically accessing the variables from our provider, and this is good enough. Now let's start defining our methods inside of the provider. So let's open up our provider and create a method called onSort. We are going to use this to sort our table, and go back here on onSort. We're just going to copy everything that it's inside set state and paste it here. And then let's remove the underscore preceding the variable name to make it a public variable. And we're going to do that to all of the variables here. Good. And we can just come back here and do users provider dot onSort. Just like that, it's going to work. Now let's go down to selected, onSelected. So we are going to create another method called onSelected, which is going to take two parameters of the type bool and a map. So we have a map here of a dynamic and a string. Call it item. Go to our file here and copy everything that it's inside unselected, and again paste it here inside of our method. Just remove the set state because we're not talking about stateful widgets no more. Do this here again, and this method is going to be used to select or unselect items from our table. To use it, we're just going to call user provider unselected. Good enough. On select all, we are going to do the same thing. Come here, do unselect all. Remove set state again, and make sure our variables are public. Good. Come back to our file and call here user provider dot unselect all. What's the problem here? Okay, right, this is a positional parameter, not a named one. Good. Let's go down to where we have unchanged. Do the same process, remove this, create another method with the same name, unchanged. So here we are going to use this method when we change the page. And then we have here this icon button to go to the previous page. Remove what's in here. Now let's create a method called previous, because this is meant to go to the previous page. Good enough. And our final method, after we have called this method here, our final method is to go to our next page. Just do this and plus plus here. Let's just call notify listeners on all of the methods here to make sure that the changes done on the provider will be reflected on our widget. Okay, well, do this here. I think this is good enough. Yeah, I think this is good enough. Now what we want to do is running the code to see if our table is still going to load the way we want it to do. Let's just log in and go to the users, and if you see here, it's working. You can select items and select all. But guys, we can still improve this code. Instead of creating providers for every single table here, we are just going to create one general provider called tables provider and use that for every single table. To do that, we can start by creating a new file called enumerators.dart, and here we are going to store our display page enumerator so that we can see which screen is being displayed. Maybe we can use that later on the app. Now we just have to import that file here, and we still have one error, so we will have to import the file down here as well. Good. Now back to our providers. What we'll need to do is to create different headers for different tables, but for now we can change the name of this provider to tables providers instead of user provider. Good. The change was reflected, and change the file name as well. Now we can change the headers, because the headers for the tables will be corresponding the particular table. On this case, we are going to rename this to users table header, because we're going to use this one for the users table only. And another thing that we can change is the source. Just find the definition of the source. Okay, here we have it actually, and change this to users table source. Good. Now we are going to do this for every single table that we have here. So we can just copy and paste this. Change this one to orders table source. This one is going to be the products table source. And source basically is the data that's going to be displayed on the table. And finally, we have the brands table source. Good. I will just show you the example with the orders table, which I believe is the most complex one, and I'll let you guys do the same for the remaining tables. So for the orders table, you would do something like orders, and if you come here to Firebase, here we have the fields. We are not going to include the card, we are just going to include these other fields here. The ID is going to be used, so we can leave it like that. Here we need the user ID. We need to have this field for our orders table. The description column as well. Let's just copy and paste this a couple times. The created ads column. So for every single table here, you would go and follow the same structure on the table inside of the app. Status, and finally we have the total. Okay, in terms of columns, this is all that we need here. So I'll just use something here called the anchor tag, and I'll comment here table headers so that I can access that easily. Now we need to modify this generate data method, because this is the method used to get the data, and when we start implementing our Firebase functionalities, we are going to change them here. So I'll just change the name of this to get users data. Good. Copy and paste this. Let's call this get orders data. Now here, where we have our init method, init data, actually we just have to do the same thing. Orders table source add. Let me remove this future to make it easier. So we just have to call the get orders on our init method. Now here for the fields, where we have temps.add is where the data is going to be added. So we have to make sure the fields here on our data section are going to match what we have in terms of columns. So I'll just be creating here some sample data. For the description, created at what can I write here? Okay, just give it 12 of 12 2020. Some description here. Again, this is just some simple data, and when we start getting this from Firebase, we are going to add some actual data here. Now we are just putting in some placeholders here. Good. Now let's go to pages here where we have order page, and we would want to change all of this. Instead of having the code here written inside of the widget, we are just going to access it using our provider. To do that, let's go to users and just copy everything inside of our build context. Just copy everything in here, and we will come and paste it sorry, and change here our build context as well. And we need to import this and change only one single thing here from put orders. So we are going to change the table header. On our case, it has to be the orders table header and the source. This is everything we need to do for all of the tables. Save, and now let's run it to see if it works. So here on our app, we'll start by clicking on users, and here we have users, and if we click on orders, we have the fields here, and everything works fine. Here we have the headers, the defined headers, and they work just fine. So everything works as expected. What we will want to do is basically go ahead and do the same for the remaining tables that we have here, and I'll leave that as a task for you guys to do. So guys, you still have to implement the same thing we just did into the remaining tables. You have to do the same thing to the brands table, and this is a very simple structure. Obviously, you don't want to have something as simple as this. You would want to have a field, for example, saying how many products belong to this particular brand and stuff, but I just want to keep it as simple as possible. You can always add more features on top of the app that we have here. You only have two fields here, the ID and the brand, being the brand name. For the categories, it's the same thing. You only need to add the ID and the category, being the category name. You only have to add these two fields, and finally you'll have to do the same thing for the products. Now here on the products, let's see what's important. For the products, I think that it looks all important, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so you can add all of this, or you can add just the essential parts, and then we are going to manage the edit product where you can view everything. But the key fields are brand, category, ID, name, and this ones. Actually, I think I'll do one more for the product because this table seems a bit complicated. I'll do this table so that you guys can really understand how it works, and then I'll leave the orders, no, I'll leave the categories and the brands for you guys to do, since it's only like two fields. Okay, let's do it. So let's open up the products collection, and these are the fields that we are going to need to use on our table. And the process is very similar to what we have done so far. Basically, we just have to replicate these fields into our table headers, and insert the data into the source. To make that possible, you can go to our provider, and here is where we have our table headers, right? We can just copy this one, the one we used for the orders table. So we can copy and paste it down here and change the name of the variable to something like products table header. Okay, this should be fine. And here are the fields that we are going to replicate. You can have here name and okay, brands. Here we can have category, which is another field. Picture. As a matter of fact, I will remove picture from the table and add more different fields. Let's put here quantity. We still have colors, we have sizes and all of that to add. So let me copy this and paste a couple times. Featured, so we can see if the product is featured or not. Sale, to see if the product is on sale. Price here for the product price. Obviously we still have to add here sizes and colors. So the process is the same. We have here sizes and colors. Okay. Now what we need to do is to copy one of these methods and change the name to something like get products data. And for the fields here must match the fields on the header. So name, brand, category, quantity, sale, featured. And we have here colors, sizes, and price. Now let's assign here the proper data types. Here for the names, we can just have product, then brand, category, just give something here, the quantity, and this is a boolean, so we'll put here false and here true, meaning that the product is featured. Let's just put here a list of colors, red and white, list of sizes, medium, large, and extra large, and a price. So this is the data fields that we need to have. Just double checking to make sure it matches the number of headers here, and it looks all fine. Okay, now we must call our get products here on the init data. So products table source, add all, get products. Now let's go to the orders page because we want to copy the same structure. So just copy the build context method and go to our products and just paste here the build context. Good. Let's import the table providers and the provider package and change the name here of the page header to products. Now we can get rid of all of these variables here in the init method. Good. This should be fine. So if we test here, the users table is working fine, the orders working fine as well, and the products table it's working fine as well. So you guys will do the categories and the brands because these are very simple ones. So guys, I will be building the orders and the products table here, and it's not that complicated. You'll be able to replicate the other tables. But one thing I want you to know is that here inside of our providers where we have tables, there's a new method called load from Firebase, and we are going to use this method to initialize our data from Firebase. You don't have this method yet, you just have to write exactly as you see it. Don't worry about the user services inside here because I already did for the users table as well, but this is a kind of an assignment for you guys. So to make that possible with the orders table, we are going to follow the following steps. So I'll just copy here and paste here to show you how it works. After having this in place, we will want to rename, or to import our orders services here and our order model as well. Again, you already have this because we've built this previously, and we'll need to change here where we have order model and create a list of orders of the type order model. The same thing we have with the users just right above. So we are going to create a list of the type order model, and the name of the list is going to be orders, and this is basically going to store the list of orders. So the type of the list is orders, and at the beginning is going to be an empty list. So now here inside of our load from Firebase, we are going to do this orders is equal to await order services dot get orders, which is going to return a list of the type order model. Now we need to change our method called get orders here. Remove this because it's not needed no more. Okay, and here we need order model, call it order in orders, and basically here we are going to call order.id, and here is order.userid, order description, and order created at, and then the total, which is going to be order.total. Good enough. We can get rid of this I actually because it's useless. And the final step here is coming over here and removing that. And notice that we have load from Firebase here inside of our init data. Coming to our app, and if we go to orders, this works fine, and all of this data is now being loaded from the database, as you guys can see. Now we are going to do something similar with the products, but the first step is to create a model because we do not have a products model yet. Import Firestore, and these are the constants that we are going to need for our products. And now we need some private variables, basically the values on the fields that we're going to need. Now we need to set our getters just like that. We have our constructor here, and now we have to initialize our variables, just like that. Now we have our products model. What's missing is a service, so let's create a new file, call it products.dart, and here we're just going to copy this service from our orders and paste it into our products service, because it's a very similar structure. Just change the name of the class to product services and the collection to products, and the value here has to be a product model. Get all products, we're going to call this the method, and do the same thing here where we have orders. Just change that to products, because we are dealing with products now. So I have here products here, and return products. Good. Now we have our products, and we have our model and our service. Now we follow the same steps. Actually, just copy this, what we did for the orders, and we are going to do the same thing for the products. Just call here product services, and I will need to import this file and change this to product services. And here on the list, we need a list of products, which is good. Obviously, on load from Firebase, we are going to do products are equal to await product services dot get all products. Perfect. Now we need to modify our get products method. Okay, remove that, remove the I because it's useless, and here product model, call it product in products. This is how we are going to run our for loop. And for the values here, basically we just need to do product.id, product.name, and remember that we just created our product model containing all of these variables. So the same thing for the brand, same thing for the product category. We are doing the same for the product quantity. Proceeding for the sale, again to know if the product is on sale or not. Featured, and here we are going to do product.colors, product.sizes, product.price, which is good enough. Just come here, remove this, and see how our changes are reflected on our app. If we go to products, it's working fine. We just have a null value here on quantity, but we are going to fix that shortly. Let's organize this and make sure that the ID is not being shown, because it's a bit lengthy of a field. And if we go to products again, the ID is not being displayed no more, the product ID. We still have the value of the product ID, we're just not displaying that on the table. Good. Now orders working fine, and our products working as well. Perfect. Let's see what's the problem with the quantity. We have the values here. We need to go to the model and see what we are missing. And the thing here is that we are not initializing the value of the quantity. That's why it's not working. So just need to do this quantity here and see how the changes are going to be reflected on our app. And just like that, it's working perfectly fine. Well, now I'll leave you guys to do the users, categories, and the brands table. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. See you guys on the next one.